Hi folks, Brian McCormick along with Casey McCormick for WGSU Sports, Geneseo Knightwatch, talking about Ice Knights hockey last week, this weekend coming up. And for Geneseo, a heavy part of their schedule, 3 straight games against ranked teams. Great showing in Hobart, last night against Adrian, not so much, but we'll start with what's first, the Ice Knight road win in Hobart. A dramatic overtime win with the highlight reel goal that you've probably heard about by now by Stevie Collins. And for Geneseo in Hobart, pretty much an excellent road game.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what we talked about, starting this 3-game trip here, working against 3 ranked opponents. And I think they went to Hobart, and like we said, they played just an unbelievable road game. Even though they gave up 2 one-goal leads, playing a team in Hobart that's fast, physical. Brian Howdy was unbelievable in net, and like you talked about, the highlight reel goal by Stevie Collins has been the story for the weekend up until last night.
They had speed, they had direction. Tyler Brickler, again, outstanding as he has been for the last few weeks. That whole line with him and Collins. And we, for the first time, really saw what Jack Siglarski brings to this lineup. Coach Schultz, very happy with him.
Well, Jack Siglarski and Connor Antho in that line, just the 2 of those guys, just growing really exceptionally in these past 3 or 4 games. And I think it was Mitch Stevens who was saying he tells Connor Anthoin and Jack Siglarski that they're doing something wrong one time and they fix it going out there. So that's just really good for Coach Schultz, as he can take solace in the fact that he knows he can trust these 2 guys.
Now, we've talked about it enough. Maybe you haven't gotten a chance to see it. Luckily, thanks to Billy Cunningham, we have video. So let's take a look right now at that highlight reel goal. Stevie Collins in overtime taking the Ice Knights over number 8 Hobart.
For Collins through the neutral zone, over the line, top of the left circle, toe drag around Coleman to the net, scores! That's the winner!
For a game with a lot of positives for Geneseo, one of the negatives that we were able to come away with talking to Coach Schultz, talking to Coach Heers, Geneseo defensively, they've been better over the last few weeks in the defensive zone, they've been better in the neutral zone in transition. A tendency to lose track of forwards behind them, guys coming off the bench, guys off the rush, stretch passes that have been able to beat them for breakaways. McBride was the big example in Hobart that tied the game at 3 and sent it to overtime. Against Adrian, Geneseo really struggled in transition, and most of it was fundamentals, but again, odd man rushes throughout the entire first period and a half, and a lot of it was defensive missed responsibilities to the neutral zone.
Yeah, and that's what Coach Schultz was talking about, just defensive irresponsibility, but also making pinches that don't have to be made, and I think we saw 1 2-on-0 against Hobart, something we talked about not having seen at this level, and then we saw 2 or 3 last night with those stretch passes. Geneseo I think they have to be more aware, like you said, of where the forwards are on the ice, especially last night with guys like Cousineau and Rinaldi with their speed and their skill, and they're so slick down low and in their offensive zone. They really have to be more cognizant of where those guys are on the ice.
And like Coach Schultz said, you shouldn't see 1 2-on-0 at this level of hockey, no matter who you're playing, let alone 2 or 3, and Brian Howdy was outstanding on Tuesday night against Adrian. Was probably the reason that it wasn't 10 or 11-1 as opposed to 5-1. And Coach Schultz says he should get the start again on Friday against Oswego. But for Geneseo, one of the things you can't coach, you can't prepare for, no matter what kind of scouting you do, what kind of film work you do, is fundamentals. And Geneseo having a lot of trouble making simple passes in uncontested areas of the ice, and every mistake they made turned into a quick break transition.
And that's what we talked about in Hobart. Geneseo really didn't make many mistakes. They made 2 or 3 mistakes, and they all ended up in the back of their net. Last night, it looked a lot like the Plattsburgh game. We had said the 4-1 loss to Plattsburgh, where they just really couldn't make the first pass out of their defensive zone, really having trouble connecting even east-west in the neutral zone. So that's something they're going to have to look forward to change. And I think even going back to the Plattsburgh game, how they looked against Potsdam in the next game, we're going to have to see a real change Friday against Oswego, because like you said, this is the 3rd ranked opponent in 3 games. And if they play anything like they did last night against Adrian, it's not going to be a pretty game on Friday.
And now adding injury to insult, Geneseo in the process also loses Gary Childeros to a lower body injury. He's not expected back until after Christmas. So going into this game against Oswego, another ranked opponent, another tough opponent that Geneseo's had a lot of trouble with over the last 5 years, particularly in this building. Last year, Geneseo losing 10-1 when Oswego came to town. They'll be without Gary Childeros and continue to be without Zach Martin and Jonathan Soucis. And especially when you look at a game like last night against Adrian, you can see where they're missing, where you would want to have their grit in the lineup, their speed in the lineup.
Especially Zach Martin, a guy who can really get into the corners and make things happen. And Coach Schultz said that last night. It looked like coming to this game they were playing the Chicago Blackhawks. They looked intimidated. They looked soft in the first period, in the second period as well. So you're going to miss guys like that, but it's good to have guys fill in. You talk about the kind of guys that they have up in the stands, guys like AJ Scaraglio, who was out of the lineup last night. He's a guy who can play a lot like Zach Martin in the corners, gritty, and that's what it's going to have to be against a young, quick Oswego team.
Now last night, despite an ugly loss for Geneseo, there was a moment of levity when between the second and third period there was some technical difficulties with the Zamboni. Luckily, half the Adrian team came to the rescue. Take a look at this. A fitting bit of irony as Adrian outworked Geneseo for most of the night on the ice, and they did it during the intermissions as well. But for Geneseo, looking ahead, like you mentioned, after a soft outing against Plattsburgh, came back with a strong outing against Potsdam, now a weak performance against Adrian. They need to come back strong against the team in Oswego that is, fair to say, weaker than we've seen the last few years as they've been at any point. But again, ranked 8th in the nation right now, still a team with a lot of firepower.
Yeah, well, they lost 12 forwards, 12 seniors, I should say, last year, and 4 or 5 of those guys were in the top 10 in scoring. So they certainly lost some firepower. But a team like Oswego, they recruit so well. They have D1 transfers come in, and they're still a force to be reckoned with. And like you said, 7th, 8th in the country. They still have the firepower to have a good game with Geneseo. And if Geneseo comes out like they did last night, takes 3 or 4 offensive zone penalties, it's going to be an ugly game.
It's going to take an important first 10 minutes for Geneseo to get going, and they're going to have to show up for an important game against a ranked opponent, which they've had trouble with in the early going of this season. Friday night, Oswego coming to town. Pregame starts here on WGSU at 6:30 with Matt Keller and Nate Joseph. And then Saturday night, Cortland comes to town. That's a special occasion. Ice Knights Teddy Bear toss after the Ice Knights score their first goal on Saturday night. Be here in the building. Make sure you're early enough that you don't miss a goal in the first 10 seconds. But when that goal is scored, fans will throw teddy bears onto the ice, donated to charity. So, fun event. I'm excited about it. Me and Casey will have our teddy bears. Not this one. I've had this one for about 20 years. This one's mine. But we'll have something for the kids.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on the Night Watch. Brian McCormick, Casey McCormick for WGSU Sports. We'll see you this weekend.